Hello, everyone. I'll be going back to diagnostic and formative assessments. This is actually chapter 7 of educational assessment of students by Brookhart and Anthony Nitko. Although I mentioned already about diagnostic assessment and formative assessment at the very beginning of this semester, and then I mentioned this one also under DepEd Order number 8, series of 2015. But I just would like to repeat a discussion on these two terms, diagnostic and formative assessments in a different perspective. So, key concepts. Diagnostic assessment is conducted to identify what knowledge and skills a student has mastered and potential reasons for non-mastery. 6 approaches to diagnostic assessment are each based on different definition of a learning deficit. So take note of the term learning deficit. 7.2. Formative assessment is a cycle. Students and teachers focus on a learning target, evaluate current student work against the target, act to move the work closer to the target, and repeat the process. Unlike diagnostic assessment, the formative assessment seeks to identify both strengths and weaknesses and involves both students and teachers. 6 formative assessment strategies include sharing learning targets and criteria for success, giving feedback, fostering student self-assessment and goal setting, ask effective questions, and helping students ask effective questions. We go to diagnostic approach number 1, profiling content strengths. Profiling content strengths and weaknesses. Looking at the strength, strength allows general idea about students' performance in sub-areas of a subject matter or a learning competency. Weakness, if only a few items tasked, the scores may be unreliable, does not provide direct evidence about attainment of particular learning goals or learning competencies. Strength very specifically identifies skills that students need to learn before they are ready to be taught new learning targets. So with this kind of definition, look at first the strength of our students. And from that strength, we start our teaching learning process. Because there might be a case that the students know already about these different subject matters, learning competencies, and you keep on teaching. So that would just become so boring. Can be used to tailor teaching. So you can design actually your teaching learning processes because you know the strength. Weakness. Proper prerequisites must be identified or the assessment lacks validity. So there are times that there are prerequisite skills. And if the prerequisite skills are not actually being mastered, then that would become a weakness. Focus on specific unlimited learning targets to teach. Communicate learning targets in an easy-to-understand form. Focus attention on students' observed performance. So take note, the focus is on the students' observed performance. Weakness, high measurement error. So be objective in the measurement, apply validity and reliability in the measurement. Offer little information on remediating deficits. So if you're not able to identify the weakness, then that could be actually giving you some little information on what are the things to be remediated or what are those different competencies that have deficits. Can see what aspects of student performance are flawed so that there can be remediation. That's still part of a strength. Weakness does not identify the thinking process that led to error. So take note of the different approaches. So looking at approach number 1, profiling content, strengths, and weaknesses. Diagnostic approach number 2, identifying prerequisite deficits. What is the strength for this? And what is the weakness? Approach number 3, identifying objectives not being mastered. So the strength is provided, the weakness is also provided. Diagnostic approach number 4, identifying students' errors. So the strength is provided and the weakness is also provided. Then diagnostic approach number 5, identifying student knowledge structure. So strength focuses on how a student thinks about concepts and their interrelationships. Allows insight into error or the difficulties. The weakness is reliability and validity is not actually being established. Diagnostic approach number 6, identifying competencies for solving word problems. The strength can be consistently applied across many categories of problems. Suggest ways to remediate deficits. Weakness is specific to formulating or in terms of algorithmic problems. Requires many items to ensure reliability, and it is actually time consuming. Formative assessment. Formative assessment is a cycle. Students and teachers focus on a learning target. Evaluate current student work against the target up to move the work closer to the target and repeat the process. That's why we classify that one as a cycle. And the objective, the ultimate objective is mastery of the competencies. Unlike diagnostic assessment, formative assessment seeks to identify both strengths and weaknesses and involves both students and the teachers. The formative assessment cycle. So students' point of view. What am I aiming for? How close am I now? What else do I have to do to get there? So these are some of the common viewpoints in a formative assessment cycle. I repeat, what am I aiming for? How close am I now? What else do I have to do to get there? The teacher's role. Ensure the learning outcomes is clear in your own mind. Communicate it so that the students understand. Provide opportunity for the students to engage, including success criteria they can use to monitor their learning. So looking at bullet number 1, ensure that the learning outcomes is clear in your own mind. So as a teacher, you must have the mastery of the learning outcome. You are so specific. You are so clear about the learning outcome. Because if you, being the teacher, does not have the clarity on the learning outcome, you don't have the mastery of that learning outcome, then basically you don't have any direction of the teaching learning process. Communicate it so that students understand. So all the time we have to communicate the learning outcome. What is the target? What is the objective? Communicate that one. Tell that one to the students. It is just like a bus riding. So you must inform where the bus is going to. And if all are actually able to know where the bus is going to, then you are all in the same direction. So just like in a class, you have to communicate what is that learning competency to be mastered, what is that subject matter to be mastered. So provide opportunity for the students to engage, including success criteria they can use to monitor their learning. Benefits of formative assessment. Cognitive benefits of formative assessment include providing the information students need in order to improve and giving student practice at learning how to learn. So take note, learning how to learn. That is one of the cognitive benefits of formative assessment. Then we go into motivational benefits of formative assessment. Include helping students feel in control of their own learning and supporting self-regulation. So take note, that having that formative assessment that will give motivation to the students. It is just like having a drill. No? You have a drill, and then what is the purpose of having a drill? For example, spelling. You have to let students write the word again in correct spelling, and you are going to repeat that one, repeat that one. So that's a drill. What's the purpose of repeating that one? Because of that formative assessment. And we look up into the errors, and you are going to monitor the progress while writing the correct spelling of the words. And if you are going to correct them, you are going to give feedback on how they progress in the spelling activity or even in any kind of activity, then that will actually produce a motivational benefit as well as cognitive benefit. So formative strategy number 1, sharing learning targets and criteria for success. A learning target for one lesson describes the intended lesson-sized learning outcome and the nature of the evidence that will determine mastery of that outcome from a student's point of view. So take note, it is highlighted in their learning target. A learning target includes a way for students and teachers to get evidence of learning and criteria for assessing progress toward the target. So there might be some competencies that you need to emphasize what is actually the exact learning target for that. So there might be some cases. I can remember a story that one time the student went home and then told his mother that he failed in one subject in a certain university, in a private university. And the mother was so mad, was so angry because the tuition is actually very high. The parent paid a big amount of money for the tuition. And then at the end of the semester, the student reported to the parent that he failed in one of the subjects he took in that semester. And then the mother asked, what is that subject all about? And then the son told speech, ma. Speech. Come again? What is that subject? Sa nahagbong kog speech, ma. Come again? What is that subject? Sa nahagbong kog speech, ma. But the mother told the son, you deserve it. The mother told the son, you deserve it. Why? Because if the son told that he failed in a subject and the subject, according to the son's speech, then he deserves to have a failing grade on that subject. Because even the pronunciation of that subject is actually wrong. And that is actually a manifestation that he deserves a failing grade. So take note of that. Strategy number 1, sharing learning targets and criteria for success. To design a learning target, identify the essential content, knowledge, and skills that you intend to teach in the lesson. Describe what students should be aiming to learn as they work on their performance of understanding and how they will know how well they are doing. Then include criteria for good work. This is the time that you are going to incorporate the holistic rubric or the analytic rubric. Make sure that students have the information they need to improve. So what are those different data? What are those different informations that they need to improve? You're going to enumerate all of them. Formative strategy number 3, student goal setting. So teach students to set realistic, achievable goals. That's why it is mentioned there. Use the acronym SMART: specific, measurable, attainable. So achievable or attainable. Have students select strategies to achieve those goals. Then other regular feedback. So why is it mentioned have students select strategies? Because if you're going to impose your own strategy, then there might be a case that that strategy does not fit with the style of the students. So let the students decide what kind of strategies. But of course, with your guidance as a teacher. Formative strategy number 4, student self-assessment. So teach effective, developmentally appropriate self-assessment techniques. Encourage reflection. That's why I notice I keep on asking you reflection on some of the videos that I let you watch. Offer rubrics with clear performance level descriptions. Rubrics can be holistic rubric or the analytic rubric. Help students to see and understand the progress. Formative strategy number 5, asking effective questions. Require attention to both content and process. Effective questions to assess content are open-ended. Effective questions to assess process ask students to use that content to solve a problem or suggest alternatives. Always emphasize what kind of strategy are you going to use and what are the alternatives. No? Suggest some alternatives. Because there might be some cases that what you impose could not be realistic with the perspective of the student. So you are going to suggest alternatives. Require attention to the manner in which the questions are asked. Make sure every student has a chance to be called. Wait for an answer. So that's very common. Wait for an answer. Ask students to respond to each other using question extenders. So what are question extenders? There might be some follow-up questions. You've got the first one, you've got the second one, and you're going to have a follow-up based on the answers. And then other members of the group would raise clarifications also, would raise some questions that could be part of question extenders. Formative strategy number 6, helping students ask effective questions. Teach students about different kinds of questions. So in the book versus in my head, what are emphasized in the textbook and what are actually in the stock knowledge of the learners. And have that one open-ended questions and then close-ended questions. Of course, you have taken different English courses, so you know what are open-ended questions and you know what are close-ended questions. Then use question starters. So you start with one question and all other questions would emanate from that starting question. Learning progressions. Learning progressions are developmental sequences that describe typical progress in understanding particular content or advancing a particular skill. Allow a focus on the big picture of learning, that's in the general perspective, viewing students' work as points along a developmental continuum. So looking into the general perspective, then looking into the specific objective. Looking at the curriculum guide as found in DepEd website, you can find their content standards, performance standards, the learning competencies. And those learning competencies are actually coming from the big picture of learning on those different competencies across different subjects and across different grade levels. Balanced assessment system. A system in which good assignments, formative feedback, and self-assessment, summative assessment, and scoring criteria all match the learning targets. Support students' learning. So you have to balance all of these, no? So we have good assignments, formative feedback, and self-assessment, the summative assessment, and scoring criteria. The scoring criteria is actually very important. You have to tell the scoring criteria by providing analytic rubric or holistic rubric. Record keeping. Record the results of formative assessment, look for patterns, and share your insights with the students. Looking at the data can speak about any information or many information. And look at the information that you get from those data recorded from formative assessments. Let the data speak. What is the message of the data? What is the data is actually speaking for? Be systematic in your record keeping. So I know and I assume that you know how to record different data. Now we have Microsoft Excel. Before we have the class record, but now we use the Microsoft Excel. Our class record is actually through the use of Microsoft Excel. Distinguish record keeping for formative assessment from record keeping for summative assessment, and even in the diagnostic assessment, you're going to